Hey everyone, in today's LightBurn tutorial, we're going to go over the cut shapes tool again, but today, instead of utilizing cut shapes to maybe use a pass-through with the print and cut feature in LightBurn, what if you have a laser that doesn't necessarily have a pass-through, but you still want to be able to make project larger than the volume of your laser? Well, today I'm going to utilize a interlocking shapes vector, like this puzzle piece vector, to cut out a large version of this Space Aztec calendar. Now, I'm going to have to do a few things with that, but the cut shapes feature will allow me to do this quickly and relatively easily. So let's jump into it. Now, the first thing we'll know is the cutting tools that I'm using are 4 separate shapes. They're all interlocking, but all of these lines have some overlap. They're not perfect, so you'll see some artifacts when I do the cut, but they're good enough to get me what I need. So, first thing that we're going to do is we're going to resize my puzzle pieces to encompass 4 sheets of 300 by 300 or 12 inch by 12 inch pieces of plywood. So the first thing we'll do is we'll select them all, and we'll leave the aspect lock on for just a second. And I'm going to make them 460 millimeters. Unlock that, 460. And then relock it. And I'm doing that because each puzzle piece is slightly larger than, or slightly different sizes, and I want to make sure that they all fit on my 300 by 300 millimeter plywood. So we'll go through and we'll select it and make sure in our properties box that the box of the shapes are all smaller than my piece of plywood. Looks like we're good. So now we'll center this up in our workspace so it's nicer to work on. And the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to make a duplicate of these puzzle pieces. And this is because as LightBurn uses the cut shapes tool, it actually deletes the cutting tool that it utilizes. And I want to use these for layout later in my actual cutting process. So I'm going to highlight all 4 shapes, go to edit, and duplicate. And what this does is it creates an exact copy directly on top of the original copy, and it automatically selects it. So the first thing I'll do while those are all selected is I'm going to put them onto a separate layer that is a different color. That way, as we're going through this, you can see that these are being deleted and the others are left behind. Now, the next thing we'll do is we'll resize our calendar to fit in our wood. So we made the bounding box of the puzzle pieces 460. Let's make these 455. Notice the aspect lock is on, so it will keep its aspect ratio. And as I'm dragging this, I grabbed the middle handle, and what this will let me do is it will let me snap to the center points of these shapes. Now we have it nicely centered up in our puzzle pieces, and we can start our cutting process. So to use the cut shapes tool, what we have to do is first select the objects to be cut. So I'm going to group select those by dragging from the right hand side over to the left, and that will select all of the objects in that group. And then the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to hold shift and select the top left puzzle piece. And this tells LightBurn that the last thing that we selected, that is going to be the tool to utilize to cut the shape. So we'll click Cut Shapes. And a couple things happened. One, you'll notice that the marching ants, they shifted a little bit when that happened. Notice this one's moving this way, and these are moving this way on the red line. The other thing that happened is our blue puzzle piece is gone. That's because LightBurn utilized it to do the cut, and then it deleted it. So now, if I click out, and I click into the puzzle piece, it grabs this and we have this nice cutout shape here. Now, there's a couple things we could do with this. We could just leave it as is, but I want to do a fill operation on this. Now notice I have it selected as line in the cuts and layers dialog. If I select fill, it does what we expect. It fills in all of the closed shapes and it leaves all of the open shapes unfilled. And this is because if we drop down window, I have filled smooth turned on. I have a pretty fast computer, so I can do this. If you have a slower computer and you still want to use the filled rendering, filled coarse is a new thing that we recently added, and it makes the render time much, much faster, and it's much smoother as you drag around if you have a slower computer. It's very useful. But, so we have all these open shapes. Now, we could draw lines in to close them, but LightBurn is smart enough to know that if it is a filled shape, when it cuts it using the cut shapes tool, it'll automatically do all of that welding for us. So if we hit the undo button a couple times, move that guy back, and we'll undo our cut. So now our puzzle piece is back and our calendar is in one piece. And notice that the calendar and the red line are not grouped together, so I can drag them separately. And then we will use the fill dialog, and now it's all filled rendered. And we'll select the calendar, shift select our puzzle piece, go to tools, cut shapes. Puzzle piece goes away. The marching ants change a little bit. We'll select out of it. Now, when we drag it over, all of those open areas are now filled as they should be. And the other thing to note is when I click this, it's now grouped with the red outline that I'm going to use to cut this out later. So that's an important thing to note. When you use the cut shapes tool, it will try to intelligently think about what needs to be grouped together and what will be ungrouped. So if you have shapes that are already grouped, plan on those groups being completely obliterated. And if you have any thing turned on in shape properties like power scaling, your power scaling probably got blown away too. So if you're doing anything like that with an object, make sure you do it after you do the cut shapes, not before. So I'm going to undo a couple steps so that we can get our puzzle piece moved back. And I'm going to repeat this process with the next 3 pieces. So select the calendar, shift select the puzzle to select them at the same time. Now that one's cut. And then we have to do it one more time. So we'll grab that. Shift select the puzzle piece. Tools. Cut shapes. And now our last piece is selected. Now for the last one, I'm going to delete the blue puzzle piece because I don't need it. And we can pull these pieces apart. So we can see what we're left with. Now, because my puzzle pieces weren't exactly lined up, I end up with a little bit of artifacting. And this really isn't a big deal, but it is important to note that it is grouped with my last puzzle piece. So the way we get rid of that is we hit ungroup, and then we'll probably need to ungroup it one more time. And then we can just select, and we can use the delete option in the edit menu or the delete button on our keyboard to delete these last little bits of overlap. All right. Now, let's select all of this. Make sure we didn't ungroup too far. And then we'll regroup these all together. Same with this. And this will just make it easier to move things around later and make sure everything stays aligned. Because when I go to cut this out on my laser, I want this red outline here to go through and cut out my puzzle pieces so they interlock. No, we don't necessarily need this outer line here. We can make that go away if we want to, but I'm going to leave it just so that I have that bounding box area for when I go to frame on my laser. Now, to send this to the laser, I'm actually going to save this out as 4 separate LightBurn projects. So, first step, I'm going to go to File, Save As, make a new folder, space, puzzle, and call this individual pieces all. And that way I have a project that has all the pieces in it in case I need to edit it. And then we'll do this 4 more times. Save as. Pieces 1. As. 2. Now I'll go through and edit all of these files so they only have one piece in them. Okay. Now we're in individual pieces 4, so let's go ahead and delete 3 of the pieces. And we'll save this. And we'll say open. 3. That back. Center, save, open. 2. Save and open. And then for the last piece, select these, and then this one. And now I can send each of these to my laser to be cut out individually, and we can line them all up. So with that, I hope you guys learned how to use the Cut Shapes tool to make your projects even bigger than the envelope of your laser, enabling bigger, better, cooler ideas. Be on the lookout for more LightBurn features and tutorials in the future, and thank you for watching.